this is amazing. I really am enjoying the chance to get together with all sorts of people to figure out what it is that we're doing here, what kind of testing we're doing. I'm fairly siloed in my experience with SmartBear products. I'm a TestComplete guy. I mean, really, that is my biggest piece of the puzzle. But the company I'm currently working for, we're working with some API stuff, so seeing what's going on with Swagger, Swagger Hub, SoapUI Pro, all those kinds of things. Wonderful stuff to get to work with. So I'm just going to kind of highlight a little bit of my, my bio with you first, because that kind of stages into where, the whole idea of lessons learned. So as was mentioned, I've been in software testing for 16 years, both manual and automated. There's an interesting story about that. What happened on Monday this week 16 years ago? 9/11. You know where I was? Paris. I was stuck in Paris for an extra couple days. At that point in time in my career, I was an end user trainer. My actual undergraduate degree is in math education. I'm a math teacher by initial training. Got into technology because my math degree incorporated 2 semesters of Turbo Pascal 6.0. Yes, I learned Turbo Pascal first before anything else. So I was on site training a client in Paris, and I got stuck over there. And while I was sitting in the airport trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get home, I'm like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to keep on doing this traveling and doing these things? One of the things that happened as a trainer and a document person for the company I was working for at the time is that I would get advanced copies of the software so I could update my documentation, update my end user training, and I was finding more bugs than the QA team was finding. Every time I would go through a new screen, I'd try to click on something and say, does this work? And it wouldn't work. And so I was logging more bugs, logging more defect reports than anybody else in the company. I'm like, this is fun. I'm actually enjoying this. So when a position opened up in the company just a couple months later for a new software tester, I said, let's give it a shot. That's basically where I've been ever since. When I came on board at that position, they had a little tool. It was mentioned already, AQ Test. It was version 1.52 at the time. They said, well, we have this initiative to do automated testing here, and we have this little tool. Nobody else knows how to use it. You want to learn? I'm like, okay. So picked it up, and that's kind of where it all started. Honestly, when it came to learning the tool, I'm going to put a plug in there, and Tanya's going to thank me for this. Go to the community. Go to the SmartBear community forums and ask whatever questions you want to out there. There are all sorts of guys up there, guys and gals both. Marcia back there, and Carson, I saw you over here somewhere. There you are over there. 2 of the folks that along with me and a couple of others, if you post a question up there, one of us will answer it. In some form or fashion, and we'll usually end up either pointing you to an existing piece of documentation or helping you out writing a little segment of code. Really, that is the best way to learn the tool, and that is really where I got my start with learning the tool. It's like, I need to know how to do something, go up and ask a question, and someone will come up with an answer. So I worked in a variety of industries over my career. The first company I worked with was a point-of-sale software company that serviced the amusement attraction industry. So if you've been to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, that was one of our clients. If you've gone to a number of the zoos across the country, those were our clients. So I worked on both the e-commerce side of things on that, as well as the local desktop on-site ticket sales for those particular organizations. From there, I moved into the pharmaceutical vertical. I worked with a company that serviced the clinical trial side of the pharmaceutical industry. That again, FDA regulations for clinical trials is like massively immense. You have to have so much documentation. There are literally rooms probably about this size at many pharmaceutical companies that store all the files for one clinical trial. That's a lot of paper. So this company I worked for, they needed to be able to have some way of being able to put all that stuff electronically to be able to send it to the FDA electronically, because the FDA all of a sudden had now these regulations that we need to save paper. Everything's going paperless. We need to have... They needed to do some automated testing on those portals. So I was doing manual testing there, and they said, well, what do you know about automated testing? I know this little tool called TestComplete. From there, I stepped into the IT service workspace, virtualized desktops, virtualized user spaces. There, I kind of stepped away from TestComplete for a while. That company had their own home-built, homegrown automation tool. So again, stepped into automation in that space there, trying to figure out the best ways of being able to integrate automation from there. And now I'm working for a hospital company, Select Medical. They have facilities nationwide, and I think they even got some European locations as well. And their primary products that they're developing are internal products for use within the hospitals, within their own corporation. And they need to be able to produce these things at high quality, again, keeping in mind patient care and patient safety. And they want to make sure that these products are put out protecting all those things. Again, there's a regulated industry with the HIPAA regulations. There are publicly traded companies, so there's Sarbanes-Oxley involved. So all this other kind of stuff going on. All this testing needs to be done to be able to make sure that they get this stuff done out. It's done in good quality, done in good security. They want to do automated testing to be able to make sure this stuff goes according to plan. They hired me on about October last year, and I've been heading up their automation efforts since then. So again, I've been using SmartBear TestComplete since it was AQ Test version 1.52. I know the Delphi script language to some extent. As I said, I learned Turbo Pascal. But I've been doing most of my programming lately in JavaScript. One of the interesting things in all my history of being a tester is I have never yet worked in a greenfields development environment. Never. Not once. There's never been a project that has been brought on board saying, hey, we've got this great idea for a product, and we want to be able to build it, and we want to kind of plan out everything from scratch, including automated testing, manual testing, all this. Never happened. Every situation that I've stepped into has always had some kind of process in place first, and someone's come in and said, we want to add automated testing to this. And that's where the headaches start, because everyone comes into this saying, we're going to throw automated testing at this, it's going to take care of all our problems, all our quality issues are going to be resolved, everything's going to be fixed, and everything's going to run smooth, and no one's going to have any problems ever again. Yeah, right, that doesn't happen ever. So I've learned a lot of stuff over these 16 years in testing, specifically in the situations. Specifically when adding automated testing into an existing development environment. So I want to just share today a few things that I've learned in this process. Now, there's lots of things you could probably talk, there's all sorts of reams of discussion you can talk about of methodologies, how to add automated testing into specific methodologies, where its benefits are, where you can plug it in, what are the best practices you can do. I'm not going to be able to touch everything. So this is going to be kind of high-level view of some things and just some anecdotal stuff that I've learned over the last 16 years. So there are 4 things that I'll highlight today. 2 of them are kind of soft skills, not necessarily technical side of things. Unfortunately, while we are in the tech industry, we have to deal with people. And you know, I'm a geek. I'm a math nerd. I'm a computer nerd. Love to read books, science fiction. I play D&D with my family on a weekly basis. So yeah, dealing with real people, no, not my strong suit. So I've learned how to deal with people in many ways. So the first couple things I want to share today are some soft skills. First of all, the idea of managing expectations of the people that are involved in the projects. And secondly, knowing your team's skill set of who exactly it is that you are working with in your automation team or in your general team. Those are 2 soft skills you need to kind of have some idea of. When it gets into the actual technical side of things, I want to talk about the concept of designing a framework, the necessity of that in any kind of automation process, and then specifically using the tools that you're given. And I'm going to highlight a couple things about my use of the TestComplete tool and the things that I've learned with that. So to start off with, the soft skills. Non-technical lessons for the technical person. As I said, I'm a technical person, and it's kind of interesting. I actually have a master's degree in theology, which is very non-technical skill. So it's very interesting that a technical person has had to learn some non-technical things in the past. And it's really, it is something that you have to learn. And there's all sorts of seminars on how to deal with people and everything out there. But really, it's a need for us in the technical field, because we are dealing with people. We're dealing with managers who are not necessarily technical people. We're dealing with the customers who are not always technical people. The business analysts, they know how to use what they want to use, but they don't necessarily know how to get there. So they're not exactly on the same technical level as we might be as testers and developers. So the first thing I want to talk about is managing expectations. As I mentioned up front, one of the biggest things that you run into when you're dealing with adding anything actually to a development process is there's always this push, if we do this, we will fix everything. If we take care of this problem, if we add this thing, if we add this process to our list of our development life cycle, then we will solve all our problems and we'll be able to move on. In fact, unfortunately, many marketing groups from software tool companies, SmartBear has been pretty good about this, they sell their tool saying, if you buy our tool, we'll fix your problems. While it might work to some extent, it's not exactly true because you need to be able to implement it properly. So there's some misconceptions about tooling that come into play. There was an article I read, I think it was James Bach wrote a number of years ago, the snake oil sales of automated testing tools. One of the big things of many automated testing tools is the idea of record and playback. And if you do that, then you'll be able to get automated testing going, you'll be able to run with it, and you'll be able to go and fix all your problems. Yeah, record and playback is good, but it's not going to fix all your problems. One of the things that I ran into in one of the earlier companies I worked with is I wanted to spend time developing good, robust automation code. So it was taking time out of our development life cycle. They had a deadline they wanted to meet, and I said, okay, well, I will try to meet that deadline. You're giving me not a lot of time because I need to be able to write this class, this unit, this method, incorporate it into the framework in this way. I have this development stuff that I need to do to be able to get this automation going. So if you don't give me enough time to do it, I'm not going to get your automation done in time. And they were like, well, can't you just record and play back? Well, yeah, but it's not going to work next week. You may be able to do it now. I hit record, record it, play it back, and it works great today, but tomorrow, no guarantee. So I need to be able to write good stuff to be able to get there. So that's one major misconception that I run into out there, that they expect that they'll be able to do something quickly and rapidly and fix all their problems. The other thing about this, is, as I said, it's not going to fix everything. Development life cycles are great in theory, but again, you're dealing with people. When they're going to start plugging into this development life cycle, everyone's got their expectations, everyone's got their little silos that they work in. They have, well, this is the way I do things. How dare you tell me what I need to do to be able to make my job work? And so your problems are not necessarily the technical side of things. Your problems are going to be your development life cycle. Who's doing what and when? Have you done the proper estimations of how long it's going to take to produce your product? Have you taken into consideration all the contingency factors of what could go wrong? There were times in that point-of-sale application we worked with where the developer said, oh, yeah, I know exactly how to fix that problem. I know exactly how to code that. They get in there and start writing the code. This application had about 1.5 million lines of Delphi Pascal code. Yeah, it was a fairly large application. So they go in and they make a change, and sure enough, it works just fine for that one scenario, but they broke half the rest of the program. I'm like, okay, well, we can't do it that way. We need to go back and refactor it. So now the development time has taken another extra stages across, and now that's pushed it out, and now what's going to, well, we don't have time to automate. We're going to drop that off at the end. The problem is not with the automation. The problem is not even with the developer. The problem is with how the life cycle is being managed. Well, okay, we can't do that now. The better way of doing it is to back that out, put that in the backlog, and fix that at a later revision. We can't do it now. We don't have time to do it now. So there's things that automated testing, while you bring it in, is not going to fix that are not the problems of the technology, it's the problems of the process. Automation is different than manual testing. And that is something else that I've heard many people. Well, it's just like manual testing, but you just need to make the computer do it for you. And no, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. One of the things that I've done in the past is when you create a test case, it looks like a scenario as a manual tester would do it. You log in, you do this, you do this, throw in some checkpoints here and there, and you get to the end and you're done. You got a test case done. That's great. But what happens if something in the middle there goes wrong? Now the rest of the scenario fails. That's just, it's a different structure. For automated testing, I want to be able to go into a page and just say, I just want to test this thing. I want to be able to go through, as Lino showed yesterday, make sure all the links work. Do all the links work? Yes, good. All right. I don't need to do anything else with those links except for make sure they're there, and if I click on them, they work. What else do I need? I don't need to go through the scenario of click on this and make sure I follow the workflow all the way through the end on clicking on that link. I just make sure the links work. Now, a manual tester could go through and click on the link on every page, but that's repetitive, that's boring. A manual tester is going to get to the point where, I know all these links work, and skip it and move on. They do that. So it is a different process to do automated testing than it is for manual testing. So that's something else that needs to be kind of dispelled. When you're doing automated testing, you're going to do things a lot differently. There's investment that needs to be placed in ahead of time. You want to be able to make sure you take the time to do it right. Again, there's this push, and it was mentioned in the morning session here, there's this push. We need to get our product out quickly. We need to get our product out cheaply. And we need to get it out with as much quality as possible. I'm sorry, but you can't do all three at once. That's been a proven factor in the development industry. You have to pick two of those, and the third one's going to suffer. And frequently, time and money are the two primary determining factors, so quality suffers. So they don't want to invest the time, they don't want to invest the money to be able to do it right, to get the good quality. It's just not going to happen. So one of those things is going to suffer. So one of the things you need to convince your management staff, the people who are making the decisions on how you're planning things out, what tools you're going to buy, you need to convince them you need to spend first, up front. Now, yes, it's going to be a very expensive investment initially, but if you do the proper investment right now, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, you're not going to be spending that again. You're going to take care of it right away, and you'll never have to touch this again. You get the right kind of tool, get the right kind of framework, get the right kind of structure, it'll all get taken care of down the road. The upfront investment is very important, and so we have to take the time to convince the people who are making those decisions that the investment is important. And this comes into this idea of getting buy-in. Again, some of the situations that I was in is they don't necessarily are asking to do test automation right up front. I've had to convince them, we can benefit from test automation. Or someone in the organization has this idea of we want to implement automation testing. And so you get to this point where you need to say, well, what's it going to benefit me? How am I going to get through it? So you need to be able to get this buy-in. You need to communicate the benefits to the people that are involved. Here is how automated testing is going to help you do your job. Here's how automated testing is going to help the company make money. The bottom line is important when it comes to some of the higher up management people. You need to be able to communicate clearly what the benefits are of automated testing. It's going to save you time in your regression life cycle. It's going to save you time in some of these repetitive tasks. It's going to save you errors when it comes to long, tedious tests that you're going to be able to get them done accurately, repeatedly. No one's job is going to be replaced. I have heard this, that there were some guys in a company, one of those companies I worked for, when you started trying to push for automated testing, they say, well, what's going to happen to us manual testers? I'm like, no. You're not going away. There's things that you can do that there's no way that we're going to do with the automated testing. Your job's not going to be replaced. That's very important for getting buy-in. People need to have this reassurance that they're not going to be substituted with automated testing, that the manual testers are still an important part of the process. You're going to get these people as partners within your process. You're going to say, how can my automated testing help you do your job better so that you get better success in your situation? If you can bring people in as partners, involve them in the conversations up front, you'll be able to get that buy-in more rapidly. The team skill set is important. Again, not all testers are automation testers. There are some people out there who just, they don't get it. They're not developers. They have great detail-oriented skills. They can go through a program and find all the bugs fantastically as manual testers, but they just are not automation testers. There are some organizations that I worked with where we wanted to say every tester in the organization needs to be involved in test automation somehow. Everyone's going to create a test case. Everyone's going to write some code. Everyone's going to do. And the complaints that came out of that were outstanding, because not everybody either wants to do it or can do it or has any real desire to do it. So you need to know your team skill set. There's some people who can't code. There are people who can't code their way out of a paper bag. I'm sorry, it just does not exist. So there are some people that may be great manual testers, but there's no way they're going to do automation. Not everybody wants to. There was this one guy I was working for, that IT servicing company. We told him he needed to do automation, and my goodness, the pushback he gave, he didn't see any benefit in it. He didn't see how it was getting us any further. He really just didn't want to have any involvement at all. The management said he needed to do it. He did it, but it was with a litany of complaints constantly. Don't make people do something they don't want to do. Your team's skill set is important. If he's an excellent manual tester, and he was one of the best in the team, let him do his manual testing. Let somebody who wants to do the automation testing do it. They're still needed. We still need these guys doing this excellent manual testing, exploratory testing out there to be able to inform us, hey, there's an area of the code that has some serious problems in it. It's very vulnerable, very fragile. Can we wrap some automation around that to make sure we catch these bugs sooner, so that I don't have to spend my time on it? They're those guys that you're going to go to saying, what should I be automating? What can I help you to be able to automate? Everyone has different automation skills, even those who are doing automation. Everyone has different experience with different tools, whether it's Selenium, TestComplete, UFT, whatever. The different tools that they're using out there, everyone has different experience. So as was mentioned again this morning, we had this idea that we had this massive set of tools out there, and you don't necessarily always want to push everybody into a particular tool. Let people bring their tools to the table. If they have experience with Selenium, well, you might be able to utilize that. Bring that on board. Let them work with their Selenium WebDriver code and bring it into the project and be able to integrate it with everything else you have going on out there. Some people can write code. Some people prefer the keyword testing in TestComplete, for example. Some people can write great object-oriented code. Some people have no luck with it at all. They just can't do it. So they have different skill sets. They might be able to be great at being able to construct a good scenario test using keyword tests, but then let somebody else who writes good code be able to support them with writing some of the necessary objects and back of the scenes functions for them. And even people have different levels of coding skill. You may have somebody who's going to write some very simple functions out there, but then someone's going to start working on the massive framework. That's kind of what's going on with the company I'm working with right now. I'm kind of in charge of the overall framework, building out some of the lower level code drivers and things that make everything else work. But I have other folks who are writing the other higher level stuff, the things that are actually going to do the actual tests. So those are some of the soft skills. And then the tool skills, this is what I've learned, and this is where I'm going to shift my talking to actually talking specifically about TestComplete a little bit. These are some of the best practices I've learned. Now, Lino gave some great stuff yesterday in the training session. He and I have different approaches for doing things. So this is some of the things that I learned, but it may not always work necessarily for you. Again, going back to the soft skills, the tool set, know your team, know your skill set, and implement what's going to work best in your situation with the assets that you have in mind. But this is just what I've learned in the different situations that I've run into. Although this one here, I can't stress more. Do a framework. Figure something out. Don't just go and create a whole bunch of test cases and just let them run. Have some kind of structure about them. A framework is going to be able to give you the reporting and everything that you're going to need to get the output to your managers, to your overseers. You're going to be able to do this in a way to be able to make it so that you can expand this to any project that you're working on. You got to get this framework done up front. If you don't do a framework up front, you're going to be spending time down the road. You need to invest in this early on, because if you try to do it later, then it's going to cost you a lot of rework. That point of sale company that I started with, when I first started doing AQ test, I was doing a lot of record, playback, modifications. Then we started expanding all the test cases, and now suddenly I had literally thousands of lines of code that if the application changed in one fundamental factor, I had to go back and change multiple lines of code. So now I'm doing all this stuff to maintain it, and if I need to then, all right, I need to build a framework, well, now I'm maintaining the old stuff to keep it running while I'm also developing time in the framework. Now you've lost my bandwidth for being able to continue adding more test cases. Do the investment up front, and you won't have to worry about that framework that cost later on. It allows you to build something that both handles your short-term needs, but then you can expand it. If you build a good framework, you'll be able to just throw more stuff into it and keep on expanding it to support your long-term needs. And again, consider your team's skill set. The framework should meet the needs of the company, but also don't try to make people do something they don't necessarily have the capability or the desire to do. You can write a very low-level JavaScript-based framework with almost no actual name mapping involved in the tool. You can do all this fancy stuff with code and everything if you have the team and the tool and the skill set to do so. If you don't, well, then you're going to be spending a lot of time doing this before you even get to doing your first test. So you need to consider, right, what am I going to do? Where is the benefit going to outweigh the risk of doing this to be able to come up with a good framework that's going to work for what we have here? The tool, TestComplete, allows you to be able to do multiple different ways of doing the same kind of thing. You can do the low-level code framework, writing out all sorts of object-oriented JavaScript code, throwing script extensions left and right, and doing all this fancy stuff out there. Or you can use what's built into the tool with test items and data-driven loops and keyword tests. Construct something that's going to be a standardization to be able to make the tool work for you across the board. TestComplete will be able to let you do a lot of that stuff. I need to move a little faster here. We have a current framework that we are using that has everything done in a database outside of the actual application. It centralizes the test execution in the data rather than in the code itself. The back end of SQL, I heavily use script extensions, and the reporting itself of the end results is in SQL as well. But again, the key point needs to be the framework should meet the need. This framework that I'm using right now in the company I work for may not work for your company. It may not work for any company other than the one I'm in right now. This is what we need to do for our tool set, for our skill set in what we're working with here. I did write something a few years ago. This is a kind of a JavaScript framework that I wrote that pulls everything out of the actual TestComplete code and throws it into script extensions and objects and such like that. That if a new person wants to come in and write a new test case, they don't have to write a line of code. They don't have to go into keyword tests. They update a CSV file. You update the CSV file, you've got a new test case added into the system. So if you're interested, again, this is a work in progress. It works to some extent, but it's still something I need to continue to build on here. And again, I'm kind of rushing through here at the end. TestComplete has a number of built-in features. If you don't have to, don't reinvent the wheel. Again, Lena was talking yesterday about you don't need to do name mapping. You don't have to. There's all sorts of ways of being able to do object identification without name mapping. You can create your custom code. But if you don't need to, if you don't have the skill set to, don't do it. The tool has the features built into it to be able to do a lot of the stuff you want to do. Again, I dissed on record and playback earlier on, but it's not exactly a useless feature. It's great for exploring. I need to know, how do I interact with this screen in my application? How do I interact with this page? Well, the easiest way to do is hit record, interact with it, hit stop, and then take a look at what was produced. Oh, well, that's how that works. Oh, I need to use this function, this method, this action. Now I know how to do it. Now I can go back in, make the modifications I need to do, take that piece, plug it into my framework, and now I'm ready to go. It's not a useless feature. Use it for what it's good for. And checkpoints are your friend. You don't necessarily, again, need to reinvent the wheel. You can write all sorts of your own if-then logic, if this and that, and all this kind of stuff, and then log either error or pass. Well, the checkpoints do a lot of that for you. The tool's got these features built into it, and they're adding to these. I think I've signed up for the beta version 12.4, and I've done some little evaluation. I think there's a couple of new checkpoint features in it, a couple of new HTTP get and request features that are really kind of cool that will take care of some of the stuff you would typically write code for in the past, but you don't need to do so anymore. The tool takes care of a lot of that for you. So use these features of the tool as much as you can. And then finally, I just want to point out there's a piece of the software that I think, in my opinion, is extremely underutilized, but it is extremely powerful. One of the common questions that I see when I'm on the community forums is, I have this unit of code that I wrote in project A. How do I get it in project B? The easy way, copy the code, create a new unit in project B, paste it in. Well, any developer worth their salt will say, well, now you have double maintenance. Now you have to maintain it here and here. Well, another way of doing it in TestComplete is adding it as an existing item. You add a script unit into another project as an existing item. Well, now you have it in the same project. You have the same code. You maintain it in one file, and now you have it in both projects. Well, what if I don't want to bother with having to add it to each project? I create another project, and I need to remember, all right, which units do I need to add in? I need to add this one and this one. As you expand your library of units, now you're expanding all these units you need to remember to add into every new project you create out there. Script extensions take care of that. You don't have to do that. It's an open architecture. If you know how to write JScript or VBScript, you can write a little script routine, wrap it up with an XML file, zip it up, change the extension to TCX, and now you have a script extension. And now, if that is in your TestComplete environment, now every project you create, that object is available to you. I don't care what files you've included in it. In fact, it doesn't even matter what language you're writing your new project in. Now you have that object with all its methods and all its properties available to you. It's amazing. As I said, that framework that I wrote earlier, I'm using script extensions very much for that. And this resolves many of the issues of shared code across projects. You have one point of maintenance, the code inside that script extension. If you need to make an update, you just update that code in the script extension, distribute it to your team, and now everyone has that code immediately. They don't need to download anything new from source control. They don't need to add anything new to projects. Now everything is available to you. So this creates this great structure that with the tool itself, you can build your framework. In fact, the framework that I'm working with at Select Medical right now, about 80% of the framework is in script extensions. I have almost no framework code as actual code in the project itself. There's a few things I needed to pull out into the projects that were not available in the script extensions, but it does work very well for sharing code. You can have your experienced staff create the extensions for your less experienced staff then to utilize in your projects. So really, as I said, these are just the few things that I learned in my 16 years experience using both this tool and in software testing, both manual and automated, as to what it takes to be able to put an automated process, an automated test process into existing projects. Some soft skills, you need to be able to manage those expectations, get people to buy into the process, and then don't be afraid to use what the tool provides for you. Whether it's designing a framework and using the built-in features of the tool, writing your own code. And again, I can't stress it. This is something I put on the forums a while ago. What's my favorite feature of TestComplete? Script extensions. This has become my new favorite feature. Use it, learn to love it, because it is a fantastic feature to be able to work with.